I think since I've seen you people, which is like a year and 3-4 months, I must have gone to almost 20 countries.
Wow.
And I just came back about right before Lashana, so I came back to one of the craziest in the world, Pakistan. And so tribal areas, and there was some, not in the area, but it was a hairy. I don't know if you know much about it, but and there's a reason why that in Pakistan, maybe I'll, and so on. Where's Klinga?
Which one?
Where is he?
We're just here. Want to get more food
I
probably.
want to get more cool, because he's interested. Because I did a lot of research over there, and there seems to be a whole union of the Asors Ashwatam, the 10 tribes, you know, and there's a lot of interesting things. So I did some research on that. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I just thought I'd just throw it in a little bit different. Okay. Got some ice there? Or?
Yeah.
So, what did you come here to it? I'm start a share, what?
Alles klar.
So I just want to say to you because you once showed me an article about the Sosa Shrotum. So I went to Pakistan and some of the areas to look at them. So it's just news like that, which is interesting. What's that? Yeah, I saw that article. The guy, yeah,
I wasn't
over this and that. I know. I was with that.
You went to that city video?
So you could start. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Probably everyone was very mystified. Why did I come back to give a share? Okay. Well, the reason why I left was because I went through the curriculum that I said I would go through, basically, and I finished just about a lot of the key topics, and I thought that I made my commitment and so on, and I thought I did that and so on. Okay. What is the critical thing that I came back? Well, first of all, before I just give the share, I want to dedicate the share to two people, Benjamin Ben Malka Henna, I should have a full name, and Chaim Zanvol Abramowitz, the Ribnitzer Rebbe, who just had his yahrzeit last week on Wednesday. So I want to say the share in his name is Aliz Neshama. That's like. That's even unnecessary, considering who he was. But you know, every little bit counts, I guess. That kind of sense. So they should all have Yom Ben Mark, Henna should have a full Shlema, and goodness, you know, I have a very close relationship with him, and he should be Nenef and whatever Torah we say here tonight. I'm going to do something very different tonight that I've never really done before. We've spoken a lot about many different idioms of hashkafa and so on, but what I'm going to do tonight is really try and make a difference. Make a difference and so on. What do I mean by make a difference? You know, we all have a very big, great obligation. I'm going to speak a little bit in English because it's reviewing and I want people to understand me, so I will translate the Hebrew terms, okay? So that other people can listen to it and understand it. So please be patient. I'm not going to use the Shiva terms, but I have to translate it. So we all have a chiyuv, an obligation to mispalel and to see as much as we can about the welfare of Klal Yisrael, of other Jewish people and so on. Just like we want ourselves to have a certain yishuv adase, a certain tranquility and a peace of mind. We need to be concerned about the welfare of other Jews of Klal Yisrael and so on. And the pasuk itself says LoSaamodAlDamReecha. You can't stand by idly on your brother's blood, which means that God, the Baruch holds us responsible. It's a chiyuv d'oraisa, and He holds us incredibly responsible, more than responsible. It's one of the most important mitzvahs in the entire Torah, in terms of the way we are with other Jews in Klal Yisrael and so on and so forth. I have a different way of looking at the world, as many of you know, besides the fact that I've traveled almost all of it. But I have a different way of looking at it. In terms of spotting or identifying different places in the world and different elements of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, in terms of where they're holding and so on. And based on my stuff, I also have a certain barometer in somehow getting some kind of a feel about where we're holding in the Gul itself and the Bias Mashiach, the coming of the Mashiach. I have detected recently, a while ago, I've detected that there's a certain chelik, there's a group, there is a section of Klal Yisrael that, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, is in grave danger, incredibly grave danger. And I don't know that anyone has identified that. I don't believe anyone has. And, you have to look at things in a certain way to see that and so on. And they are in very great danger. And the danger is that I believe, it's my opinion, that they are in danger of losing the chelik in Olam Haba. So, and I'm talking about a large group, I'm not talking about a small group. And I will identify this group very, very shortly, and so on. And in addition to the shir that I'm giving in the schus of this, we're also going to say some tilim on this and so on. So this is, I'm mishtatif, I'm going to combine all of us in a certain sense in an unusual way that I've never really done, and make us all part of this mitzvah, which is LoSaamodAlDamReecha. And whether I'm right or wrong, it's an attempt to really make a tremendous difference in what's called real time now. So they're just learning Hashkafa, or learning the Derech Hashem, the way God works, is one thing, but then doing something about it is another. So I'm going to explain to you exactly what it is. Some of the concepts that I will say tonight you've heard before. You've never heard it in this way or in this arrangement. And the fundamental topic that I'm going to speak about tonight, really the group that I'm going to speak about, is the Erev Rav. I've never really given a real shir on the Erev Rav. In the Yotzat shir, I gave a lecture on Esav. And I said some very strange things to the ones that have heard that. Very strange ideas that the first appearance of the Mashiach is in America, it's not in Israel, and that one of his main instruments is the tshuva of Esav, and so on. Has everyone listened to the Yotzai Shir just about? Everyone listened to it basically? Yeah? Anyone didn't listen to it at all? You can get it, Eliezer has it on video actually, the video. He also put it on YouTube. So I finally got to YouTube. I don't know if that's a mark of distinction or it's a mark of notoriety. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but whatever. So,
That means Mashiach is coming.
What's that?
Mashiach is coming.
It's either that or he's not coming. I'm not sure, depending on what he feels about the story. But in any case, this shir is going to be on the Erev Rav in a very meticulous detail about describing who they are, what's going on in terms of what is the thing and so on. Because we have some major questions. One very big question that I personally never had really a satisfactory answer. We all know, that there are 4 persecutions of Klal Yisrael. Really more. There's 5 in essence. Actually, there's even more than that. But fundamentally, what the Medrash tells us, what Navi tells us, is that there are several world-class, world-powered nations that in human history, in Jewish history, human history, are going to oppress and persecute Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. And of course, the first one on a major scale was Mitzrayim or Egypt, and so on. That was the first one. And then after that, we have what's called the Dalet Shibudim, or the 4 ones, and those four would be Bavel, Babylonia, would be Paras, Persia, Yavon, Greece, and Ace of Rome. Okay. Now there are two extras that are thrown in for good measure. One is Yishmael, or the Yishmael, which is fundamentally the Islamic peoples, and specifically the ethnic group of the Arab nation. And I don't know if I ever gave a shiur on that. Maybe I'll give a different one on that and stuff like that. Okay. But the one that really involves us now is the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, and we'll talk about who they are. And the Vilna Gaon makes it very clear that today, in our times, in the Ikvos of the Mashiach, in the last generation before the Mashiach, the main Shibud is the Erev Rav. Not the other ones. Even Esav falls to the side to some degree, and the main one is the Erev Rav. And the question is why? Like, who are these guys? Like, why should they be the last Shibud, the last oppression of Klal Yisrael? Who are they? What are they doing? Why do we meet them at the last generation? Like, what is this all about, really? And I never really spoke about that, but this is extremely important because what we see is the Erev Rav in action really endangering Klal Yisrael. And there are certain sections of Klal Yisrael that are so much in danger, in my opinion, there's a possibility of losing their chelik in Olam Haba. So, this is what this is what it's about. Now, in order to understand this concept of Erev Rav and a lot of things, there are certain fundamental ideas that we need to present, okay? Some of these ideas I may have presented before, so you'll recognize them. Other ones I have not. Because I don't know by the end if I really got to a full-blown picture of the Geula, of really what it is. I don't think I ever really got to the full thing, and so on and so forth. How do we know what the Geula will look like? How do we know what the redemption looks like? And the Pasuk says, Achim is gracious. In other words, we look at the first Geula, the first redemption from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, to give us the parallel structure of what's going to happen later on. Chazal say, Ma'aseh Sim Labanim. In other words, that which occurs to our forefathers, biblical figures, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, so on and so forth, are in some way a foretelling prediction of what's going to happen to us, and so on. And why that is a self-hold share and so on, but fundamentally, this is the basic idea. So what we want to do is, I want to go over the first Geula, but in a much clearer way, to point out key things that are going to happen now. And that are actually happening, which nobody really, I don't believe anyone really recognizes or sees, and so on. And with this information, I think you'll have a much greater clarity when you read a newspaper about exactly what's happening and what's going on. Okay? I thought I would start a little bit earlier, so I'm going to try and finish this. We're going to probably go for a good hour and a half. I hope you guys don't fall, you guys are able to handle it and stay up and so on. And so after we finish, we're going to say the Tillim. So, it's important to hang around. You want to be part of this mitzvah. I think you want to be part of this mitzvah. When we say that there's a Geula, when we say that there's a redemption, what do we mean? Well, there's two parts of Geula. There's two parts. One part is what's called the end of the Golus. It's the finish of a Golus. It means that we leave whatever nation we are entrapped in, which brings a choshech or a darkness on us in terms of ruchnis, or spirituality, and we leave it, we get out. That's the end of the Golus. And that's really what the word Geula means. The word Geula corresponds on the other side, on the other way, to Golus. Golus is an exile. It means that we reside in an oppressive nation. Geula means we get out, we're redeemed from that. Okay, and in essence, Geula is really a process of tahara. It's a process of, tahara of purification. It's not a process of kedusha. We don't elevate us, we get out from a makom of tumah, from a lower place, and we arrive at a place which is now what's called choil, or which is called like zero. We go from -1 to 0. The movement of -1 to 0 is really called tahara or Geula. The movement from 0 to +1 is called kedusha. So when it says kedusha and tahara are two different verbs, are two different concepts. And it's very important to understand that. Tahara means to cleanse yourself or to clean up your act, to go from -1 to 0. Kedusha means to go from 0 to +1. Okay, and they correspond to the two Mashiachs. Okay, with the main tikkun process of going from -1 to 0, which is called tahara, is a function of the Mashiach ben Yosef, Okay? And to go from 0 to +1, to go high, that's the function of Mashiach ben David. In more fancier terms, and I'll throw these out for the benefit of some of my older Talmidim, okay? The main purpose of the Mashiach ben Yosef, which is Tahara, okay, or better the other way, the main purpose of the Mashiach ben David, which is to bring a Kedusha in the world, means to elevate Chulin, or Gashmis, to Ruchnius. Well, not even Ruchnius, because Olam Haba has nothing to do with Ruchnius. But as far as we're concerned, it's to elevate Gashmis, okay, through Ruchnius, or physicality, the spirituality, or better, from a world that's trapped in time, called Zamanis, to a world that's free of time, called Nitzchias, that has nothing to do with time. So that movement, from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba, okay, in a certain sense, has to do with a process of Kedusha, which is connected to Mashiach ben David. But because of the Chet of Adam Rishon and the sins that we all do, we have to now undergo a second tikkun, which is to clean up the mess. And before we can decorate an apartment, we have to clean up the messy apartment that we located. That's simply what it is. And to do that because of the sin, the Chet of Adam Rishon, that's called Tahara, and that's the Koyach Hazon. So the process of eliminating Gashmias to Ruchnias, which is Kedusha, that's called the Tikkun of the Nachash. The Nachash, or Kadmoni, or the snake that caused Adam Rishon to sin, is called the Nachash. That Nachash symbolizes the Yetzer Hara. And the purpose of the Yetzer Hara is to attempt to block you from changing the nature of physical reality to Ruchnistic reality. Okay? Or it prevents you from Kedusha. Because since the Mashiach ben David, his process is to bring Kedusha, he is Masakin the Nachash. It's his job to get rid of the Yetzer Hara. Not easy. That's why the only one that ever got rid of the Yetzer Hara in a certain sense was David HaMelech, when he says, V'libi cholol b'kirbi. And he said, I got rid of my Yetzer Hara, which is unbelievable, because he is the shirish, or the root of that tikkun. So he was able to do that. Okay. The other process, which is Tahara, represents the Mashiach ben Yosef, and that's called the tikkun of the Zoyama of the Nachash. Zoyama is Tumah, but Tumah is a certain, we gave a lot of shiurim on that, I don't know if it's Tumah, but Zoyama fundamentally is the conversion of a chet, a sin, the energy, the negative energy of a sin, into a form that it can be eliminated. Normally a chet cannot be eliminated. A chet becomes part of you, and once it's part of you, you're in big trouble. Because what a chet does is it annihilates you.
Decomposes.
So what happens is that the chet is converted or transformed as an agent outside of you, so it can disappear without you disappearing. That's called Zoyama, and that has to do with the Midas HaRachmim and so on. Okay, I'm just quickly running over stuff that I don't know if you remember this or whatever it is and so on. Just a quick cloud and so on in that kind of sense. Okay.
So David HaMelech doesn't take care of the Zohar?
No.
He does not?
No. Well, he doesn't. That's not his job, right? Yeah. Who do you think has the harder job? Really? What? B'shib and Yosef. That's why Yosef went to Mitzrayim. He had to remain he had to remain an Elech Yidin. You have to remain Ruchnias in Mitzrayim as a prisoner. Whereas Yehuda was in his father's base medrash, and he had a shiurim in the Sodom. I mean, he also had problems, he had different things, but it's a whole different ballgame, and so on. Actually, the Ribnitzer once said to me, he once said, that which Yosef has to go through, David would fail. What's that he said? David fundamentally cannot handle what a Yosef must do. I mean, that's a powerful statement, and a man who I believe is Zocher the Gilin could say that. Yes. How do I know that? He once said that to me. I asked him once a certain question, and he said something, and I said to him, "How do you know this?" I mean, I don't believe this is written anywhere, whatever the story is. And he said, because Elionovi told me.
Is there a Makor Chazal for the Mashiach?
Yeah, in Chazal, yeah. The Mashiach ben Yosef is only mentioned, I don't want to go into it, the Mashiach ben Yosef is only mentioned once, in the morning Sukkah, fundamentally, that he dies. And that has to do with a whole different aspect of the Mashiach ben Yosef, Yerovim ben Nevat, and the 10 tribes. And maybe in a different time we'll talk about the 10 tribes and how their redemption has to do with the Indian of Yosef. It's Yosef who condemned them, and it's Yosef who now has to pay back the situation in terms of that. And that's how. But there's a whole Indian of the tikkunim of the 10 tribes is it's a tremendous parsha because everything you learn has, when you really think about it, the 10/12 of Klal Yisrael no longer are here, and they're part of Klal Yisrael, and they're somewhere that nobody really knows. Okay, number 2 and so on, and they disappeared before the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So their version of Judaism, their version of the Torah is totally different. They don't know. They never heard of Shas. They never heard of a Gemara. They don't know what you're talking about when you say Rav and Abaye. They have no idea who Hillel and Shammai were. And so on. They were exiled. I think it was 772 BCE. You know how early that was? It's incredible. So they didn't. When they left, the Beis Hamikdash was still standing. So they don't know anything about Bavel and so Purim, Chanukah doesn't exist for them. Which means that most of Klal Yisrael has no shaykhus to what we have today, which is shocking. You see, which means that all hashkafa system must include them, what their tikkun is, and what they're about. Forget about where they are, but what are they doing? What are they about? What is the tikkun that they're doing? It's extremely important to talk, and it doesn't have to be a completely different share.
Do they have to do something? I mean, do they have to exist?
No. It's a machlokas whether it is the Olam Haba or not, but fundamentally, and so we're going to talk about later about different shades of Olam Haba. Okay, so we have this concept. And the second, so the first part of a gula is the end of a golus. The second part of a gula is the introduction of a new light. Or chodesh al Sion Torah. And it's a separate process, okay? It means suddenly an awe, an enlightenment, an elevation of consciousness comes out to the world, which has never appeared on the world before. Now you may say, okay, so what's so good about that? And the answer is, because you are nothing more than consciousness. So if I change the tape in your head, you're a different person, and that's really what it is. And the world changes, everything changes, and the greater thing. If I change the way you understand existence would actually change in front of you. But that's a whole, and that's a whole different concept and so on. But so that's really what it is. So a new aura represents a new consciousness, completely. So that's the second part of the gula. Now, Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, was the first time we attempted that. What you have to say something which is a very interesting thing that when you look at the Torah, you look at all the events in the Torah and the stories in the Torah, besides the Taryag Mitzvahs, when you look at the Maisim, or you look at the stories in the Torah, you say to yourself, what is this? What is the Torah really saying? I mean, what is it really doing? What is it saying to us? It's telling us the story, of what happened, to who our forefathers were, who the others were, and so on. And then it goes into the whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, everything, fine. You see it. And then it talks about what we call it, in only 2 parshas, Bereshis and Noach, about what was before Avram Avinu. And those are only 2 little parshas, and the rest of the Torah talks about the Jews in Egypt and the Jews in the Midbar in the desert. That's it. So yes, so what's the structure? What does it say? Is this a book? Is this a history book? What is it saying? Why do we need to know? Most people think that the reason why we need to know this is to learn Midos. We studied the Avos, we studied the Avram, we studied, what were the Nisyonis, what were the tests, what Midas do we see, what personality traits do we see. We try and explain what they did, we try and figure it out, and so on. Almost all Mefoshim on the Torah are fundamentally descriptive. It means what they want to tell you fundamentally is first of all, to describe what happened. Many times in the story in the Torah, you don't know really what happened. So they're there to tell you, well, he said this because he really thought that, or he meant that. It's a description of really, it fills in the blanks in the stories. That's what most of the Mefoshim, or the commentators in the Torah do. You see it, and so on. But the question is that there's another way to look at the Torah, which is completely beyond that, just description and so on. And the question is, what is that? And the answer to that is, why is this story being told? Why is that story being told? What's the hemshich or the continuation, the continuity of the stories, like what it is and so on? And that's a very difficult question to answer. And if you really understand that, you suddenly see a completely different type of what the Torah really is. You see, because you have to remember something also. that the stories in the Torah are just simply what happened. In other words, what happens if the Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, didn't worship the Egel? What happens if Adam didn't sin? What happens if the door of the Mabul, they didn't sin, and there was no necessity for a flood, right? At any point in time, it could have been different. So the question is, so the story would have changed. So that means that the Torah is mutable. The Torah has the ability to change. But wait a minute, we say that the Torah is not mutable. It cannot change. But you see, there's a part of it that has to change. If the story changes, then the whole thing changes, You see it. And this is a very important thing, which means that there are two parts of the Torah. There's the foundation of it, which never changes. You see it. And then there's what's called the manifestation of it. What happens? It's the same thing. The distinction between a tzaddik and a chassid. Okay, it said tzaddik Hashem b'chol dvachov, that the Rebbeinu Shem is a tzaddik in all his ways, but the chassid become myself. But he's a chassid in what he does. So the question is, what's it mean a tzaddik and a chassid, and what's the difference between the derech Hashem and his maisa? What is that saying? And the answer is, the tzaddik is someone who follows the law. He does what's supposed to be done. That's called the derech. That's the preferred methodology, okay? And if a person does that, he's a tzaddik. That's what the Rebbeinu Shem wants. Lichatchila, that's what he wants. But many times people don't do what's supposed to be, okay? So therefore the Rebbeinu Shem cannot go with the midas hadin, and he has to go with what's called a ma'ila min hadin. So therefore that's called a chassid. Someone who goes beyond what he needs to do, okay, is called a chassid. So what we're saying is that there's a preferred way to achieve the tikkun, but in actuality, and that's through the midas hadin. But because we sin and we do all kinds of things, we have to approach the tikkun by the midas harachmim, which makes the Rebbeinu Shem a chassid. The Rebbeinu Shem acts like a chassid, but he teaches like a tzaddik. It's interesting.
Tzaddik is din and chassid is rachmim.
Tzaddik is din and a chassid is rachmim. Mava medosav, absolutely. So, yeah, and that's the pasuk. Tzaddik Hashem. When it comes to what the Rebbeinu Shem wants, okay, which is the foundation of the Torah. He's a tzaddik. The Rebbeinu Shem acts like a tzaddik, and that's his derech. But Lamaisa, when it comes to the actual history of the world, which is horrific, the Rebbeinu Shem is a chassid. He can't go with din, he has to go with rachamim, which is l'mayla min hadin, which is more than the din, okay? And in that way, his maisam is about rachamim. What's that? It's my pshat, yeah. Oh, he said that?
Exactly.
Okay, subscribe to me. Okay, yeah. But yeah, it's a very important thing. So we see that the Torah itself, its foundation, it's tzaddik Hashem b'chol dvachov. The Torah in its foundation is what the Rebbeinu Shem wants. But in terms of its actual description, it's what he did. The Torah really describes what he did in a certain sense. So what he wanted in the first Doros, okay, we don't really know. We don't really know what those tikkunim are. We don't really know clearly. We can barely get out the story. We're so far away from what the Torah is saying that we can barely understand the story. That's why you have 1.5 million maforshim just to tell you the story. The problem is that nobody's really telling you, okay, in a certain sense, at least I don't see, or maybe on some level, you understand what's the foundation? What was supposed to be going on then? What happens if this happened or this didn't happen? What would the story look like? That's not discussed at all. You see it. And it's critical. So one of the clues to that is what Chazal tell us in the Medrash number of places, where they divide human history into 3 kufas or 3 periods. The first is called Tohu, the second is called Torah, the third is called Yemot Mashiach. And we spoke a little bit about that and so on, but I just want to quickly talk about what that means. Chazal say that the first 2,000 of human history until Avraham Avinu is called Tohu, chaos. The second is called Torah, which is Torah. The third is called Yemot Mashiach. And the truth is, that's an incredible chazal. That chazal is all of human history. If you understand that chazal, you suddenly understand what's called the tikkunim in every generation, what the Rebbeinu Shem is doing over here. So very simply and very quickly, okay, in the first one, Tohu means that mankind is supposed to achieve what he achieves, okay, through the midas hadin. And if he doesn't achieve it, he's in trouble. So that even though the midas harachmim saves him, but the midas harachmim comes from outside the system and fights with the midas hadin like 2 boxes, okay, where one suddenly is in the ring and one comes out. The boxer in the ring, the strong one, that is the midas hadin, he is in charge of the internal process. But what happens is, when suddenly mankind fails, then the Midas HaRachamim comes from the outside, jumps into the ring, okay, and knocks out the Midas HaDin. But the relationship of these two Midas, mercy and justice, okay, is external, okay. That's why it's called Tohu. In other words, technically speaking, when the Midas HaRachamim has to save the world in the first 2,000 years, which of course is the story of Adam, the story of Noach, and so on and so forth, the Midas HaRachamim had to clobber the Midas HaDin to save the world from Tohu. In the second Kufa, which is called Torah, it's a whole different story. The Midas HaDin, the Midas HaRachamim, was inserted into the Tikkun process. So that if you suddenly make a mistake, so it's the system itself which heals you and rehabilitates you. Nothing from the outside. It's a very fancy word in English which refers to a fact when a system heals itself or establishes what's called its own equilibrium. Does anyone know this fancy $50 word? Anyone? Homeostasis. Homeo means the same, stasis means a state. It means the system itself has the ability to measure when suddenly it's off center, and the system itself has its own internal mechanism to say, oh. You know, it's like a gyroscope, or a guided missile that is always correcting itself, or like a GPS. You mean? You know, the same thing. If your GPS is attached to your counter, that's tohu. Because, you know, it's not part of the car, it's put on top of the car, and when you don't know where you're going, you look at this thing and say, oh, that's where I'm supposed to go. But when the GPS is inside the car, you know, it's part of the console or something like that, and it suddenly screams out, stupid, you're making a mistake. Oh, that's inside, the car's telling you you're an idiot. That's the concept of homeostasis, if I may use such a strange emotion. So Torah, which is the second 2,000 years, which is the whole meaning of Klal Yisrael, is called that because the Midas HaRachamim is in the system. Now, you may say, what's the chiddush of that? The chiddush of that is what's called, it's guaranteed. It means you cannot lose. Yisrael, afa b'shechati Yisrael. Even though a Jew sins, he's far away from Torah, from going back to nothing. Far away. You know? That you'd have to be an extraordinarily difficult, bad Jew. Terrible, terrible Jew in Zom Torah. And we're going to speak about that a little bit in Zom Torah. To lose Olam Haba. You see, really bad. That almost 99% of Klal Yisrael will get Olam Haba. Why? Because of homeostasis. Because it's self-correcting. You see, that's a tremendous chiddush, and that's a change in the tikkun. Whereas the tikkun the first 2,000 years was this, the tikkun in the second 2,000 years is completely different. You see, it's homeostatic, which means it heals itself. The third kufa, which is called Yemos Mashiach, is really based on the second. So when Klal Yisrael is supposed to lose the Geula or lose the Yemos Mashiach, okay, suddenly the system brings down the Yemos Mashiach, even though Klal Yisrael doesn't deserve it, but puts it into a negative zone. And for the next 2,000 years, the Yemos Mashiach is a negative zone. And that's why when people say to me, when is Mashiach coming? And what I say is, he's already here. He's already here for the last 2,000 years. History in the last 2,000 years really is showing you, indicating the messianic process. You just don't see it. So the Mashiach is not coming in the sense. What he's going to do is not bring the Geula. He's going to change the Geula in terms of minus to plus. You see, because the Geula itself is homeostatic, which means that for the first 4,000 years, the Bnei Hashem expected you to bring the Geula. That's it. You have 4,000 years to bring it. One was in what's called Tohu, where there was no self-correcting system, and the second 2,000 years, there's a self-correcting system. That's it. The Bnei Hashem therefore doesn't want, after the year 4,000, okay, which corresponds roughly to what? To the Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, and Rabbi Kivan talked over. After that, the Bnei Hashem had no desire for the world to continue, because the Avodah was only supposed to be for those 4,000 years, and that's it. The next 2,000 years was the guaranteed, or the homeostasis, or the self-correcting system, putting the Mashiach and the Geula itself into a negative zone, putting them into Cherem, and then releasing them from Cherem, which is strange. It means in the last 2,000 years, the Geula goes into Golus. Bizarre. What should have happened is in 4,000, there should have been a Geula or redemption. No. Because of that, because of the homeostasis, because of the self-correction, the Geula, when it happens, supposed to happen, goes into a Golus. Very, very strange. Okay, so we have this. Now, from that you understand something very important about the Torah. Why does the Torah spend so much time, so little time on Adam and on Noach and so on, and it spends so much time on the Ovis and on Klal Yisrael in the Midbar, in the desert, for the next 40 years? And that's the whole Torah. You know, by the end, by Moshe Rabbeinu dies and this and that, and they go into Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't even talk about Eretz Yisrael, even, you know. The rest of it is consigned to Nach. Okay, so the question is, what is this thing? And why? Because what I believe is this shows you something, the inner content of the Torah. You see, what the Torah is really saying to you is this. Who are you? You are Jews, Klal Yisrael. What's the difference between you and everyone before you? You have Taryag mitzvahs, 630 mitzvahs. What do those Taryag mitzvahs do for you? They guarantee you come out Olam Haba, so you can't lose it. The fact that we have Taryag mitzvah, 630 mitzvahs, is the homeostatic mechanism. Before the Torah was given, they only had 7 mitzvahs. With 7 mitzvahs, there is no self-correction. Only with 613, you see it. So that's why the Torah says, okay, when the Torah is given to Klal Yisrael, it's given to a tikkun that involves Taryag, not 7. So what's the story of the Torah? So the story of the Torah is the following. What does it take to go from Torah to Torah? You see, you think that the story of Mitzrayim, when the Jews of Mitzrayim, and they come out and this and that, you know, it's a story of the fact that they finally got out, they received the Torah, and they had they have a lot of terrible things. They made a lot of nisyonis, a lot of things. They complained to the Banasham. They had the Chet of the Eagle, the golden calf. They had the Chet of the Meraglim. You know, it's like the mistakes that Klal Yisrael. The Torah is a story of the mistakes that the Jewish people made when they left Egypt. That's what it looks like. Not at all. Not at all. So when we bother looking at the mistakes. We analyze, what happened over here? What was this? But the truth is, let's look at the concept of a mistake. What the Torah is really saying to you is simply this. The Banasham seems to be saying the Torah is that, wait a minute, I want to move from Tohu to Torah. I want to change the whole relationship between the Midas Adin, justice, and the Midas Rachman. What, you think I can just change it? What, you think that what? I can just stamp change it because I want to change it? No, you have to be zoicha to the change. So therefore, every nesoyim, every test, every mistake that Klal Yisrael made in the desert was a nesoyim or a test to see whether or not the change could take place. That's what it's about. All of those 10 nisyonis are indications, to see whether the Jewish Klal Yisrael is zocher to have that change. And what happens if they fail? Which they did. So then if they failed so many times, why did they finally get it to correct? Because the thing was, it was a guaranteed system. You see it. But on a certain level. But to see to it that system becomes total, you see, they had to pass different tests. So really, when you look at the Torah really is the story of how, from a ruchnistic standpoint, how from a tikkun standpoint, we went from Tohu to Torah. The mistakes we made, the corrections, and how, so the Torah is really the story of the Bria, of existence itself. It's a story of the exchange of existence from one period to another, much deeper than what you realize in that kind of sense. And this is extremely important, you see. Look, as a quick aside, Avram Avinu, what was the last and greatest test? The Akedah Yitzchak, right? The Akedah Yitzchak. Now, what was the big deal of the Akedah Yitzchak? What was that Nisayon? What was the test of the Akedah? So people say different things, but fundamentally you can simply say, the fact that he wanted to kill his son. Well, that's not easy. I mean, that's incredibly difficult, right? And so on. But the bottom line is that wasn't as great as you thought it was, because right down the valley at that time, Moloch, they were sacrificing their children to Avodah Zarah, to idol worship. So if they could do it, it's not easy. But okay, what's the greatness here of Avram Avinu? So if you want to see that the greatness of the Akedah, was the fact that he was willing to sacrifice his son, you don't have a great argument. So let's go on to the next one. So then what is there? So what was so great about it? Where the Banashim said, Ki atu yadati ki velikim, now I see that you fear me. What's the chiddush? Well, what did he do? You see it. So let's go on to the second one. The second one says different. The second one says, the Banashim said to Avram, from you I'm going to make a nation. Through you and Yitzchak. Right? Okay. And then suddenly he turns around and says, go kill Yitzchak. So that's a disturbance that the Buddha changed his mind. That's what you think. You think, so Avram is saying, you know something, I got to scratch my head on this one. What just happened? You know? And then he went ahead and did it anyway. You think what the Nisayon did was that he simply said to the bunny, he was done to the punishment the kaf's chus. Okay, the bunny changed his mind. I don't know what he changed his mind for, but I'm going ahead anyway. That's also not the story. Not really. It's got a weak version of it. What really was much worse. Because when the bunny said to him, what? I'm going to what? From you, I'm going to make a new nation. That's the concept of self-correction, homeostasis versus nam. The Bunny said to Avram Avinu, you have to say, I'm changing the whole concept, the operational system between din and rachamim. I'm changing it so that from you is going to start a new concept of what's called homeostasis. I hate to use this word because, or self-correction, okay? And therefore from your children on, it's going to be a new thing. They're not going to become goyim like the first nations. They won't. Yisrael, the Jews will always remain that way. So the promise that the Bunny made to Avram was the fact that his children will be guaranteed to make it to Olam Haba, which means that the world will survive. And then suddenly the Bunny turns around and says, now go kill Yitzchak. So in essence what he was saying to Avram, I changed my mind, the world is not going to survive. The Midas Hadin is going to annihilate the Bria. That's what that statement was. It's like the Bunny suddenly retracted on the guarantee. You see what I'm saying? It's Shrekler. So he's telling Avram, I changed my mind, the world is nidon li'ibud, it's going to be annihilated. So you can say that was in the Nisayon, and I believe that was. So this is much, much worse. This was incredibly traumatic and dramatic for Avram. What's that?
Even had Avram not shafted Yitzchak, it wouldn't have helped, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu reneged.
Sorry, well, save the question. Let me just... I don't want to go off on that. Hold on, we'll get that. Ask me later on. Here's the point. But there's another question you have to ask. Nobody asked this question. I've never seen this question ever asked. You see, what is this question? What kind of Nisayon is this? In the entire Torah, in all of history, did the Rebbeinu Shem ever say to someone, I want you to kill your son? This is Achzorius. I mean, this is cruelty. You want to kill someone, so you kill him. He dies. He dies from a disease. He gets sick. He dies, or whatever have you. But you tell a father to kill his son? Such a trial, such a test never appeared in human history. I mean, if your father's here, you understand what the implications of that is. No matter how fancy we get in the drushes, no matter how fancy we get to understand what Avram was, the bottom line is, forget about Avram. The Rebbeinu Shem, this pas for Eloki, to say to a father, kill your son. Do we have an answer to that question? No. So I'd like to give you what I believe is an answer. And I'm saying this in the context of what we're saying here, which when I saw it, I was like shocked, I think, what I believe the answer is. Avram Avinu was a Mashiach. In fact, he was the Mashiach of the last generation. He was the Mashiach of the Dor HaFlaga. Just like Noach was the Mashiach of the Dor HaMabul. See, these are Mashiachim that you're talking about. They were supposed to be Mashiach if the generation would have done the right thing. That's why from them always comes the next generations. Like when Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the Mashiach of his generation, and when the bunch of them said, I'm going to make a new nation out of you, this formula was already used a number of times. You see, that the bunch of them goes to the Mashiach of that generation and says, since this generation has failed, I'm going to make a new nation from you. So that's not a chiddush over here, why it came from Avram. The thing is, what is he saying? So what happened was something that never happened before, because they were switching from Tohu to Torah. They were switching the entire operational system. You see, you need a tremendous chusam, more than at any time in human history. It's like when you're promoted. If you're promoted from one clerical worker to another, okay, they give you a little test and so on. But what happens if you're promoted from being a manager to becoming a CEO? Suddenly you are scrutinized incredibly to see, right? Because you're the head of the corporation. So when the Rebbeinu wanted to change the system, from Torah to Torah, there was a tremendous kidrug. More than at any other time. And the Sultan said to the Rebbeinu, he said to himself, you can't do this. You see, I, who represent the Midas Hadin, I am the power in the system. You want to put in a new operational system into this, what? In me, and suddenly correct me inside myself? He says, what chus are you representing? So So and then he says the second statement you can see. The Kittuk Makatrik said, not only can you not change the system, you see it, but your children have to die because if there's no tikkun of Nam Niksufa, there's the old buzzword again. If there's no tikkun of Nam Niksufa, Lama Lichaim, what's the whole purpose of everything? You know what I mean? Okay. And so the Baruch Hashem said, Echer, I hear what you're saying. So the Baruch Hashem said, I understand you need a tremendous schos, and you also, what do you call it, my son should be united, fine. But then the Sultan said, I have a third statement to make to you. He said, the third statement is not only do your children have to die, you've got to kill them. Because you made them, they're your kids, you've got to kill them. You have to kill your son. See, normally, the Baruch Hashem is always the one. I mean, the Baruch Hashem is always the one. But the Sultan says it's not simply, well, it's going to die indirectly through disease. No. You have to take the gun and put the bullet in his head. You see it? So what does Baruch Hashem say? Oh, you want someone to kill a son? I have someone that'll do it instead of me. Go to Avram. So when Avram was told to kill his son, this wasn't the Achzori, this Chas v'Shalom. This was the highest madrega of a Mashiach that suddenly didn't represent Klal Yisrael. He represented the Rebbeinu Shalom b'chavodu b'atzmai. He was told to do that which the Rebbeinu Shalom himself was asked to do. Speak the Midas Hadin. Why suddenly did this come up? Why should the Makatrik say? Because it was moving from Torah to Torah. Because when you change a complete system, to do that you need incredible merit and wisdom, you see. So the Mashiach, who normally only represents Klal Yisrael, what's called that the Mashiach represents the damage of Klal Yisrael, suddenly the Mashiach had to represent the Rebbeinu Shalom himself in the process. So you see, this is the Torah. This is what's really going on. But when you look at the story, or you're trying to figure out what's going on and so on, but you start to break down the story, suddenly the whole thing pops out as a different kind of an understanding in that kind of sense. Now, let's move on. Let's move on to Mitzrayim. What was the thing? Why did the Jews go into Mitzrayim? Very simply. And the answer the Baruch Hashem said, well, to Avram, you want a new system of guaranteeing what's going on? Fine. You're going to have to take back the koiches of Kedusha, which have to do with the Bina or the Shechina. You cannot bring a Gula without the Shechina. Where is the Shechina? The Shechina is in Mitzrayim. It's in Mitzrayim. The light, the awe of the world, from the time of Adam Rishon until that time, all the Kedusha, all the Nitzutzim, all the sparks of the Shechina were all sitting in Mitzrayim. That's why Mitzrayim was the greatest nation on earth in terms of Kishuv. Because they had 90% of the Shechina in them. Tisha K'av and so on. So Avram says, so your children have to go there and they have to take it out. They have to take out this thing and so on. What is this concept? This is a concept called the Bechor. You have to say something. A Bechor is the firstborn son, the first Peterechem, the first opening of a woman's womb. What does that mean? It means it's the first instance of actual creation. And the firstborn son, the Bechor, who's the firstborn, has a much greater Kedusha than all the other sons. That's the Indian of Bechor. And so on. In fact, he has twice the Kedusha. Esav was twice as great, in a sense, as Yaakov. He failed, but he was twice as great, because he was the Bechor. That's why Yaakov wanted the Bechor so much, because of the power, the ruchnistic power that's to them. So the Baruch Hashem said to Avram, well, guess who's the Bechor of the Bria? Guess who owns the Shechina fundamentally? Egypt. Why was it given to Egypt? I think the Medrash says that Mitzrayim came up with the bright idea of the Migdal, the Migdal of Bovel. The Tower of Bovel was the Mitzrayim's idea. So obviously he did something spectacular. So he represented, he had all the Kedusha in Tumah. He had the Shechina in the Tumah, in the Zorama was resting Mitzrayim. Okay, he was the Bechor. So the whole story of Pesach really comes about because we have to go from Tohu to Torah. How? We got to go into Mitzrayim, pull out their koyach to be able to do that. You see? So therefore, the story of Mitzrayim is nothing more than the transfer of the Bechor. You see, you got to talk about that in a different way. The whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim to come is about the Bechor, the transfer. Because when Klal Yisrael goes in there, and it's supposed to take the Shin out with them, and suddenly it's Mitzrayim, Egypt is no longer the Bechor, Klal Yisrael is the Bechor, and so on. You don't see that statement. That's it, that's the whole story. How do I know that's a story? Because the last plague was Makas Bechoros. So you have to say to yourself, what's this Makas Bechoros? so that every family in Egypt should feel some kind of a devastation? No, because it was really the transfer of the Bechor of Mitzrayim to the Jews. Every Bechor that died in Egypt did not die by the Malach HaMavis in a normal way. He died because his Bechor Neshama was sucked out of him. It was an abnormal death. He died not because he died because he was a Bechor, which means that obviously the death operation over there was a completely different type of death than ever occurred on the planet. No, this death never occurred at all. Never. So that was the thing. So we see that the whole story of Mitzrayim is this kind of thing and so on. Bad news. Bad news. What does the Torah say? The Torah says that what? That when they left Egypt, finally, right? 1/5 went out. According to, 150, 1/5. 80% of the Jews died in Egypt. It's astonishing. If imagine, that means there were like 6 million people in Mitzrayim, and only 2 million went out, or 1/5, 10 million. Can you imagine that? You imagine Sunday you get up one morning in Makas Choshech, and suddenly 4/5 of the Jewish people are gone. Most of your neighbors are gone. And obviously we know they didn't move to another neighborhood. Where did they go? They died in Choshech. What is that about? What is that about? What do you mean they died? You see it? It means they want Zoicha to take out the Bechor. They want Zoicha to take out that kind of thing and so on. But you have to say to yourself, why did they die? So we have to re-look at the whole story of Egypt in a totally different way. In a different way. And the story changes. And I'd like to give what I consider to be this version of what really happened, because it's based on what we're really seeing here. When Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Jews and he said, good news, we're going out of Egypt. They said, well, incredible, we're leaving the Golas after 210 years. Mazel tov, we're finished. So they said, this is incredible news. And then they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, where are we going? So he said, we're going to Har Sinai to Makabel the Torah, okay, which is Taryag mitzvahs. So they said to him, well, what are these Taryag mitzvahs? And he said, well, you have kashrus, you have isuri, macholos, you have tzitzis, tefillin. So they said, well, how long does kashrus last? Well, he said 24/7. Something which is not kosher for the rest of your life. And they say, something, this is like too difficult for us. Really too difficult for us. We don't really, thank you, but no thank you. We don't really think we want to do this. That's strange. How much Jews said that? Most of them. Probably 90% of the Jews just didn't want to leave. You see, so what happened? So then started the Makkos. But in essence, what happened? By the third Makkah already, the Torah says that Paro, clearly the Paro no longer had free will. He was forced to say no. If he no longer had free will, then the question is, so what's the purpose of the rest of the Makkahs? The other 7. What do you need 7 Makkahs? Why do you have to bang somebody over the head an additional 7 times when his head is already broken? So then what was the purpose of the other 7 Makkahs? You see my point? What? So what I believe is the purpose had nothing to do with Paroi. It had to do with the Jews. The purpose of the next 7 was the Jews themselves. Why? Because the Baruch Hashem is saying to him, you see, you should know. You know what you see from this Makkahs? You see from these Makkahs not only my power, but my will. I want you to leave and go to Torah. I want you to come to the Torah with Taryag mitzvahs. This is my Ratzon. The Baruch Hashem was Magala to the next 7 Makkahs, his Ratzon. And he was saying to Klal Yisrael, you must leave. And they're saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, no, we don't want to do it. So the Baruch Hashem, okay, so he said, another Makkah. Each Makkah was designed to try and convince the Jews that this is what I want to leave. You see, what happened? By the time they got to the 9th Makkah, which is Choshech, 4